Hi there. We are back once more, and as you can see, the intelligence has been completed already. I've soldered these two capacitors, and I've cut the leads off, being very careful not to poke anyone or poke myself with the flying little pieces of wire that fly off whenever you cut them. So now we're going to jump over to this section here, this section of the board, and we're going to do this section, which we're going to jump into the diodes. So if you look on the board, you see little rectangles with sides that are darker. Those are for the diodes. Diodes, which are these here, which you'll have eight of them, they'll go here. So they'll go on these. So you'll see D2, D3, D4, D1, D5, D8, D7, and D6. So those are the 8. That's where these would go in. And whenever you look at the diode, the actual physical diode, you'll see that it has a little white band. That white band will go in the same direction as the white band on the board, because these are these should go in a certain way. These are polarity dependent. These should go in one way, because if you put them in another way, the project won't work, and these won't be happy, and your board won't be happy. So they'll go in that direction. And C5 and C6 are the 104 capacitors, the ones that say 104. Those will go there. Those obviously don't have, those aren't polarity dependent, so you could put them in whichever way. So we're going to do that right now. So you take this off. Take this off. And then you grab one of these diodes, you bend it, and then once you put it in there, like we mentioned, make sure the band on the diode and the band on the board are the same side. So you put it in there, and that's how it should go. And you do the same thing with all 8, which is what we will do. Two more to go. And put that one in there, and we'll be doing the last one. Okay. And before we do the soldering, we have to check that all of them are in the right area. Yeah. Stripe, 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 stripe. That looks good. So now we're going to solder that. And we're going to solder in these capacitors in there as well while we're at it. So you put them in there, and you do that. We're gonna solder it in there, we'll get back to you. Okay, we are back here, and we have now soldered the 8 diodes and the 2 capacitors. The next step would be to apply 5 jumper connections. The jumper connections will be in these boxes labeled as J5, J6, J7, J10, and J11. And what primarily is a jumper is just a cable, the cable provided. We're going to cut it into 5 sections because we have 5 jumpers, and we're going to bend it into a small U-like shape and place it in between 2 of the contacts. Because each square for each jumper has three holes, so we're going to be connecting 2 of those. And depending on what the schematic says, we'll be placing those in there. So let's cut it into 5 sections using wire cutters. Okay, now that I have my 5 sections right there, 5 little pieces of wire, you get needle nose pliers. We got some right here, and you just bend it like so. I'm not sure if you can see that there. Bend it into a small U, and we're gonna do J5 first. And the way we're going to do it is going to be B and C. So we're going to connect B and C. We're going to leave A by itself. So we're going to come over and we're going to place it in B and C. This is kind of tedious, so there we go. And then you push it through. And then there you go. You got B and C and it's connected. So you leave that in there. And then you go again, and you could either use needle nose pliers or you could use your fingers if you can. And you bend the other wires. And the next one we're going to do is J6, and J6 is E and F. So we're going to connect it E, and we're going to connect F. And the same thing goes with J7, but with J7 you're going to connect H and I. Pardon me, H and I for J7. So you put it in through H and I. Next step is J11 and J10. J10 will be K and L. So we bend it one time. J10 is K and L. So K, if I could put it in. Okay, that's when I'm going to start using my needle nose pliers, because they won't go in. K and L, there we go. So it's K now, and with the last wire, the last little piece of wire, you're going to bend it once more, and this one you're going to place number, for J11 you're going to place an N and O. So you're going to go N and O, and make sure those don't fall out, double check them, and you apply solder to them, either through the top or through the bottom. In this case you could just do it through the top because it would be much easier, because if you were to solder it from the bottom they might fall out. So in this case just solder it from the top, and we'll get back to you once I solder those. Okay, we are back, and we have done the jumpers already for J5, J6, J7, J10, and J11. So now we're done with those jumpers. We're going to go over to the resistors. So whenever you see R1, R2, R3, and R4, we will be populating those quite shortly. R1 and R2 are what's called shorts. So with the other part of the cable that's left, the cable that was provided, you're gonna pretty much, instead of putting a resistor, and the resistor was one of these smaller ones, instead of putting a resistor, you're gonna put the cable through it. So you're gonna stick one end and bend it, and the other end where you see the little hole, you measure it, you make a image of how long, because of how long it should be, or you could come along and get your needle nose pliers and place it right above the hole, and you take it out, and that is where you will bend it, because it has to be placed in the two holes. And what we're doing here is we're measuring how long it should be, how the bend should be, as you can see here. So that bend should be just enough. We're gonna clip that side, and that should be able to fit in there nice and snug. This doesn't have to fit in there perfectly, but that, as you can see, that is good enough right there. So that's R1, and that's the short. R2, whenever you see the R2, that square, that will be the same thing. So we go over and we stick it in one of the little holes, and then we bend it, and in the back you see how much is sticking out. So that's about a quarter of an inch, and you come over with your needle nose pliers and you place it right above where the hole is at, the other hole, and you clamp down on the wire, and that's your reference to where it should be bent, and then you bend that there, and again you're left with that, and you come over here and you clip that, so you kind of get a U type shape there. Come over to R2 and put it in, and it should fit nice and well, nice and snug. So that's R1 and R2, but before we do soldering, we're gonna go over to R3 and R4. R3 and R4 are actual resistors, and we're gonna be using the 2 kilo ohms, 2K, so 2000, and that the color code would be red, black, red. So whenever you look at them, it would be red, black, red, and then the tolerance, so that looks like goldish, but you don't have to worry about that as long as it's red, black, red. And you're gonna come over here, and the way to place these resistors will be just bending it nice, like a U shape, like so, and then you place it in both holes at both ends of the little rectangle that says R4 and R3, and then you push it down, and it should fit nice and snug. And you do the same thing with the other one. And you put them in. And now that you have them in there nice and snug, we're going to solder R1, R2, R3, and R4 to keep them in there permanently. Okay, and we'll get back to you.